Rather spooky. This bag's coming to you with another truck video today. I just caught your response to Burning Coal. I have not watched his video yet. With regard to Nick Fuentes, I'm not a fan of Nick Fuentes. I'm not a subscriber, but I understand his message, and I have seen him enough to understand that there are two versions of Nick Fuentes that you're going to get during an interview or a debate or whatever, right? I consume a lot of debate content, so I see Nick Fuentes on other influencers' platforms, right? And what I'll tell you is the Nick Fuentes that you see with Piers Morgan is not the same Nick Fuentes that you see with, for example, Steven Crowder, right? So Crowder keeps the interview locked into good faith, whereas Piers Morgan is a fucking gotcha machine, right? So Nick Fuentes wears the racist label as armor against the Piers Morgans of the world, right? So Piers Morgan's like, oh, that sounds racist. Are you a racist? And he's like, fuck yes, I'm a racist. Eat a bag of dicks. I'm a fucking racist, right? And he says that so that Piers Morgan really can't come back and hit him with it again, you know? It's armor. Now, if you see the less bombastic version of Nick Fuentes, what you'll find is that what you just said about not wanting to live near black people is exactly what he says, right? And the reality is, you don't have to tell white people to self-segregate. They do it naturally, and it's not a matter of black and white. It's a matter of green versus no green, right? If you look at New York, if you look at any major city, the white people that live in the city, well, those who have a lot of green, they live in high-rise apartments where young black men with no green can't get in because there's a doorman or there's a security system or whatever. They're already self-segregating and removing themselves from allowing the young black population to have access to their property. And you know what's really funny about that? When black people get money, they do the exact same thing, right? When black people get money, they move out of the ghetto and they move into places where ghetto dwellers cannot access them. So that's not really a race thing. That is, and you're right, it's not a cultural thing because, you know, ghetto mentality is not limited to the black population. You put a bunch of poor white people in that same ghetto and they're going to act the exact same way, right? But humans are tribal by nature, you know, and by nature we will associate with people that look the way we look if we have that option, rather than associating with people that look different from us. That's in our DNA. That's tribal. That's not a racist thing, right? I guess I should define my own personal definition of racism, right? So I believe that racism is a view that one type of human being is lesser than based on the immutable quality of their skin color, right? Or another immutable quality, you know, like East Asian, the shape of East Asian eyes, for example. You could, you know, if that's how you judge people, then yeah, you're a fucking racist. But, you know, and again, I haven't watched Burning Coal's video. Based on your description of it, it seems like, and I mean, hell, even myself, like, I can only view the world through the filter of my own personal experiences, right? So if that's his view, it's been crafted by his experience with the world. I will say this about the politicians. You're not wrong, but you didn't go deep enough. Your analysis stopped at the ground floor, and I'm about to take you into the basement. Okay? We're going to the foundation. The reason why boomers voted for all of this bullshit is universal suffrage. Yeah, it's an unpopular opinion, but when you give every adult the right to vote, then they're going to vote for people that are aligned with their own mentality. And at a disproportionate rate, they don't have to deal with the fucking outcome, right? So I'm going to use women as an example. Women vote for politicians who then vote to send soldiers to war. Well, the military is like 93% men, 7% women. But the electorate is 50% women. And on average, the United States is, you know, if you look at Congress over the last 50 years, it's been fairly well represented on both sides. It's around 50% on both sides, right? You got half the country voting red, half the country voting blue. But women disproportionately vote blue. They just do. And so when you give women the right to vote, they're going to vote for people that are politically aligned with their own mentality. And then those people are going to go to Washington and they're going to do the bidding of their electorate. But a large swath of their electorate doesn't have to pay the price for a lot of those decisions. That's how we ended up here, by letting women vote. Universally, right? Like I'm not against you know, there being a price to pay before a woman can vote. But I want to be consistent here too. Not all men should be allowed to vote. Not all white men should be allowed to vote, right? Like I believe that the founders intended for the voting population to have skin in the game and to understand the nature of the world, right? For example, why can't you be president before you're 35 years old? Well, it's probably because you don't have enough experience before 35 years old to run the entire country. And if you don't have the experience to run the entire country, then what makes you qualified to vote for the person that is going to run the entire country, right? So that's kind of the foundation of where it all went wrong, was universal suffrage. You know, and right after, well, shortly before the 19th Amendment, you got the 17th Amendment, I think 6 years earlier. The 17th Amendment is a fucking abortion in the Constitution. Prior to the 17th Amendment, United States senators were appointed by their state legislature, most commonly the state Senate. Well, if you have the power to appoint, you have the power to recall. That was the natural understanding at the time. Along comes the 17th Amendment, thanks to the fucking early 1900 progressive movement, where they say, oh, the Senate is just a bunch of fucking millionaires. Oh, nothing ever happens in the Senate. And they say, okay, well, here's that was a classic example of, we need to do something, this is something, so we need to do this, instead of actually thinking through the fucking problem. So the 17th Amendment, it was a populist-driven amendment. It gets ratified, and each and every one of those senators went from being appointed by their state to popular election every 2 years. Well, every 6 years, but you had to get the thing going, so they had to have That's why you vote on senators every 2 years along with House of Representatives, right? You're voting for a third of them every 2 years. Every goddamn one of them, to the man, went from appointed to elected, right? So it didn't solve the problem. You're still dealing with the same fucking millionaires club. You're still dealing with the gridlock problem because it's the same people there. So that happened in, I want to say 19 and 13. Fast forward 112 years. Would you classify the Senate as anything other than a millionaires club? I wouldn't. Would you say that the Senate has become a rubber stamp for the House, or that it's still things still get gridlocked in the Senate, right? I would say the gridlock still exists. Otherwise, government shutdown would not be part of the American vernacular. So that's the foundation of it. It's not the boomers. The boomers didn't do it. They just played the hand that they were dealt. All of this goes back to the early progressive era of the 1900s. That is why we are where we are today. Now, I'm no fan of the boomers, and you know that. You and I have talked about this offline. And the reason I'm no fan of the boomers doesn't really have anything to do with the decisions they made or the power that they have. It's entirely because they're all a bunch of pretentious fucking retards, in my opinion. But I'm like you, I'm Gen X, and we're just wired differently, definitely differently than they were wired. But that would be my response to your response to Burning Coal's response that I haven't seen. Other than that, yeah, that's kind of where I see it. Nick Fuentes, I don't believe he's a psyop, dude. I think Nick Fuentes is the natural result of 30 years of white man bad. That's what Nick Fuentes is, right? You know, and he'll be the first one to tell you he's only half white, right? Like, but it's just that when you call the largest demographic group in the United States racist, when everything they do is the opposite of racism, legislatively, I mean, eventually, you know, people are gonna rise up against it. If everything's racist, then nothing is racist, right? Nick Fuentes is the logical result of liberal talking points. You know, they hit you with the racist card, they hit you with the Nazi card, they hit you now, it's the fascist card. And none of those words meet the legal definition of what you are actually doing. So what do? Did you know that in 2009, Merriam-Webster changed the definition of the word fascist to include the words right-wing ideology? Those words were not in the definition of the word fascism up until 2009. You can get on AI and you can filter it down and have it look for fucking pre-2009 dictionary definitions of fascism, and the current definition and the previous definition are not in alignment, right? So they changed the language to suit their own fucking narrative, and this isn't the first time the liberals did this. They do it all the time, right? Perfect example, a couple weeks ago, the fucking double tapping or anchor shotting the drug boats, and they were saying it's a war crime to attack a shipwrecked vessel. Yes, it is. It certainly is. But every word in the English language has a legal definition. So you go to the black letter law legal definition. What is a shipwreck? And a shipwreck specifically involves natural forces. Ship ran aground, you know, bad storm, shit like that. Words that you don't find in the black letter law definition of shipwreck are drone strike, Hellfire missile, etc., etc. Those were valid military combatants. They were not hors de combat. You know, they weren't trying to surrender. And I don't know about you, but I have seen a bazillion double fucking taps from a fucking Reaper on ground forces. So what does being in the ocean, how does that change the fucking calculus? It doesn't, right? But that's, once again, liberals changing definitions. So that's kind of where I'm at, brother. As always, you don't have to agree with my opinion. I'm just putting it out there so that you know where I stand, so that at no point in time would you be willing to say, I do not know my brother. That's where we're at. All right. I love you, brother. I'll talk to you later. Bye.